All right. So welcome everybody. Today is April the 15th. This is the bi-weekly Model Registry, Kubeflow Model Registry meetings. Welcome everyone. This meeting is being recorded and is governed by the by the CNCF Code of Conduct. We have an agenda items that we are going through today. I just wanted to take on this time, just in case that there are some new introduction. Feel free to raise your hand. You can raise your hand by using the utility function just at the bottom of your screen. In the meantime, if everybody is feel free to raise your hand. Just a quick reminder for the Google Summer of Code. Thank you everybody that submitted a proposal, not only from the Model Registry team working group, but also from the whole Kubeflow community. We received a great numbers of proposals. Thank you for taking the time to go through and submit. Yeah. I'm hearing us. Okay, thank you, John. All right. So we submitted, we received a lot of proposals. Thank you for those one. Now the Kubeflow Google Summer of Code organization is going through the review of the Google Summer of Proposals. So if you submitted a proposal, this is now being reviewed. I want to take this time just as a reminder that regardless or beyond the Google Summer of Code, you're more than welcome to keep getting engaged with the Kubeflow community, not only the Model Registry working group, so these meetings and this working group, but the Kubeflow in general. A good place to get started is the Kubeflow Slack. In the minutes of the meetings of today, you can find all the links to have a continuous conversation. So I know that somebody also was looking into an engagement with the community beyond the Google Summer of Code project or scope, I would say. So this is, for instance, this is one perfect place to get started with that one. I've received a couple of questions about specific things that can be contributed. And so I've tried to give some pointers, but in general, feel free to reach out in the channels that I've mentioned beyond the Google Summer of Code itself. If I'm not seeing any raised answer, so I will just move it through the meeting item agenda, because I think that we will have some talking points later down the line. About the next item in the agenda is a Kubeflow 1.9 release checklist. So I've been keeping tabs on the tracker for the issues that we have for the 1.9. I think that we are covering all the bases, and we just closed the loop on some of the previous one from considering the previous bi-weekly call. I've also just last week and earlier this morning, I've been running through some comments that I've received on the website documentation. So I'm going to speak that in just a while. There are two things that I believe are of relevance to raise to the group. Is that one thing is from the previous bi-weekly call, we have received the Docker tokens are now correctly verified for as part of the GitHub action. So as we discussed, we have this GitHub action that periodically for every merge pull request, it will send an updated image on the Docker Hub. This is working. This was also a good way to try out the GitHub action that we are sort of uplifting from the previous project into Kubeflow are working as expected, so that we can cut the release as needed by the release team. And further, as mentioned in the previous bi-weekly meeting, also in the Kubeflow release meeting, I've mentioned that the version that will be done for Model Registry is 0.2 alpha. So that is okay. There was a question, more a question is like a talking point in previous bi-weekly call about use cases. So we given these 2 weeks to go through the use case documents. So the use case document is the one linked here. These are description on where the Model Registry brings value-added propositions as a Model Registry, but in the context as well of a platform, an MLOps platform, a platform for running machine learning pipelines, and these kind of workloads, machine learning workloads such as Kubeflow. So this document, I'm planning now to sort of like pour the content from being a Google Docs inside of the documentation. So what is going to be like, just to give an idea, is that as part of the website for the documentation, I'm going to speak to that in just a moment. So there is it's currently looking something like this. There is a model registry component as discussed. There is first an overview of model registry. This is where I'm planning to add the use case content. So
are you planning on doing that on the same PR?
Yeah.
Or kind of a follow-up? Okay, same PR.
Yeah, I'm planning to do that on the same PR, unless you advise me to do differently.
No, just so I know where I can take a look. I didn't have time to take a look at the doc, although it seems great. Just wanted to go through that. So maybe I'll wait for you to update the PR and then
I will prefer.
Yeah.
No worries. The thing why I've just left out, I mean, we just published first as a Google document was to sort of like try to ease onboarding of comments.
It was a great idea. It was just me coming in late. Sorry for that.
And it's like we can always sort of like amend the content if need be. So let's say I think it's a good to have a first cut of the website documentation. I've also, just while we're speaking about it, I've incorporated your comment, Stefano, about the reference. So in the reference, you wanted to see some architecture diagrams with components laid out. So these are also sort of like having hyperlinks to the specifics of each component. And then there is as well all the things that are needed from a documentation point of view, or as well as project documentation links. So
this is great. This is awesome.
Also, I've taken on board your comment to split the getting started in two parts. So now there is going to be first an installation that just deals with the installation topics. The call to action for this page is running to the getting started, and then in the getting started is just focusing on, let's say, hey, yeah, my system is already ready, so I'm just a user. Just playing with that. So I just reorganized the content according to your suggestion. I received a couple of comments that actually my bad copy paste. Maybe I had some comments that was not really working as intended. So that is already reflected in the PR. So to me, it's like good to go. From the if maybe we have somebody not recognizing this diagram, I've taken the chance to use this diagram that proposes two loops, because the first diagram had just one general loop, and I found it difficult to sort of like having it speak to the kind of like the inner loop and the outer loop for machine learning pipelines or operation in platforms. So these, I think it's a great help.
Just a comment there, and this goes beyond the current PR, and maybe it's something we can iterate later. And it's more of a probably philosophical comment, but how about we think how the model registry fits in the in the existing MLOps infinite loops that we see out there. What I'm thinking is, what if instead of making it like, I get the point of trying and build an infinite loop around the model registry to kind of highlight the value of the model registry. That's an approach. Another could be saying, hey, this is the canonical MLOps infinite loop, which we've seen both as a two loops form, which kind of reflects the DevOps infinite loop. There are others who do it with 3 loops. You've had more things. And an idea there could be saying, these are the parts of the loops that are highlighted or that are, let's say, dependent on the model registry, or where the model registry actually fits in. Like, you get what I'm saying?
Kind of, because isn't it all is like, for instance, like when I'm say I'm creating a new model, right? So at least this diagram is like, I think that is sort of like what I've tried to do here is just a rewrite on other diagrams that I've seen about model registry in general. So you know, avoid sort of like cutting a screenshot of another blog post and placing it here, just recreate it. So what it speaks to about here is that when you're creating, say, a new model, there is where you want to track, you can verify by handing over to another data scientist colleague to say, hey, you know, it's like on the model registry, there is a new version, please check that one out. When it comes to package, then you may decide that you want to ensure that you have all the information that you want in order to be available for the deployment, which typically call release and deploy. So from this is the part where we have the example from Kserve, where you're saying, okay, do I have all the metadata that I need in order to put into deployment my model? And then finally, once you do that, you may decide that you want to have hyperlinks of your model version that you've deployed to the monitoring operations. And then this will kickstart the sort of like the Moebius effect or the infinite loop to say, okay, now I want again to plan on a new version because I have new data, these kind of things.
Here's what this picture makes me think of. Like I'm realizing as we speak, this picture makes me think of the model registry as something that sits in between these phases, but maybe it's somewhat a separate component or step that happens in some way in the middle, but you know, happens after package, before release, after monitor, before planning. So in my head, the way I'm picturing it is I'm looking at the MLOps infinite loop and I say, how does the model registry fit into the planning phase? Or how does it fit into the create phase or the verify phase or the package phase? And I think some of these phases use the model registry, maybe others don't, and each of these phases uses it differently.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Stefano, so are you like, does the image make you feel like, the model registry is kind of doing a handoff between the inner and outer loop? Is that
exactly what I'm trying to say? To me, it feels like the model registry is more of a glue component across these phases. So it's not like it fits within the loop, but it fits
instead of like being there all the time?
Kind of, exactly. It kind of fits on some specific phases differently, and it can be either a glue, an integration point, or an enhancement over what can be done without it. So what it makes me think is deploy could be, highlighted in the sense, like the way I'm saying it in my head is I see highlights where the model registry applies to the MLOps loop, but it applies differently. So you could say deploy is highlighted because it is impacted by the model registry, but you also have a label that says how, like how does the deploy phase benefit from the model registry? And then you say the create, how does create is highlighted and it says how does it benefit? It could be a push metadata or something, whatever. Monitor as well. How does the monitor phase? So I think you get what I mean. I don't want to kind of block on this. It was just a
observation.
Open comments about.
Thanks for that observation. I think the problem is, the earlier architectural diagram that Matteo shared, right, where we show layers. It kind of shows, the model registry being part of everything, right? All the components talking to it. So that kind of, shows you what, what the model registry is doing structurally, right? Like it's involved with, all the components and stuff. But in this diagram, right, with the loops, we are trying to show like the runtime behavior. And maybe we need to think of a version that shows that it's actually involved in all the phases, while trying to show that there are.
I think it could even be more powerful because you actually represent how many stages in the MLOps infinite loop are actually affected. You highlight that front and center. Here, I don't think it comes across.
Quite captures that. Yeah,
scroll.
because that's a good point where it looks like it's a glue, right? Like an intermediate
Yeah.
step between the two phases or something. If you have any ideas,
I
we're open.
do, but how do we collaborate here? Like, do you guys have so is there a place where we can kind of collaborate on creating a diagram, or should we just go over
The way
suggestions?
and the way
What do you
that
want to do?
the way that it was also one thing. Let me try to see if I can sort of like pick back up the previous version. What I would like to just take the time to ensure, Stefano, is that so because would something like this better fit what you're saying?
Actually, this diagram gives me exactly the same idea as the current one. Like in terms, I still feel like it is represented as a glue among all of these phases, exactly the same way I'm seeing the current infinite loop. Because even here, what I would say is, okay, but how does the model registry fit into these phases? Like, does it fit in all of these phases? But if so, how? Right? Like, it's unclear to me at this point. Looking, like, I know, but looking just at this diagram, I don't think it comes across.
Okay.
And it could be much more powerful if we said so with
So
being
can
a little
you,
bit more specific.
yeah, can you add some diagram that you could think of to that PR, to the
Yeah.
published PR?
It's like one thing that you can do, Stefano, is like if you want, like for any PR, because I didn't receive any comment on the previous one, but also what I was missing was kind of like what I've received, kind of like a comment is that it was not very clear how, when we speak about the different loops, how does it affect the model registry, which are the phases that we sort of like affect to one phase or the other. So this one was more adherent to what I could understand. Maybe it's like what you can do is that if you want, you can scribble. I mean, you can take a screenshot if you want, and you can scribble on top if you want.
Yeah,
But
that's what we'll probably do. But to what you were saying before, and you said you received some comments saying it's unclear what phases the model registry affects and how, like, do we have that in writing in the user stories maybe that you were saying?
no,
Or somewhere else?
as you can see here, is like what I will need to do is that I will need to sort of like try to overlay what is the inner loop and what is the outer loop of MLOps on this diagram. That I was not finding a way to do that on this kind of diagram, because this looks to me like an agile loop that goes through, and it's like I was, I can overcomplicate the figure as much as I want, like, overlaying half a here, half a semicircle here, calling it in and outer loop. I mean, there are different ways that I can do, and I believe that I cannot really fit into a picture everything that we want to say. So I want to be mindful about incorporating all the feedback that I'm receiving, but for as well making it sort of like
So okay, I think I have an idea. I have it in my head. I'll try and draw it on my iPad and then share it. But before doing that, I think what would really help, maybe even beyond the diagram, is what if we wrote a small sentence for each of these phases and say, this is how the model registry fits into that phase and it helps. Like, small paragraph that just says so. Could be in the use cases doc to kind of iterate there. So maybe we clarify even among ourselves how we want to talk about it, and then we can see how does that translate into a diagram.
Right, how the model registry specifically support each of the phase from the diagram.
Okay, I'll try to have some scribble tomorrow or Wednesday, and then I'll share it. Want to continue the discussion in the PR, or shall we move that forward and open a new one? What do you prefer?
Let's see which, I mean, I can take on this action item to sort of like have a more, I mean, I can pour the use cases. I can also pour the information about making it for each of the phase. As you're suggesting, this is also good feedback, like how does it affect? So maybe as we will see, once we have this one done, it will be more clear if we need to update the diagram with a small modification. If we feel that we will need maybe big modification, it will be better to me to flush this one in and then eventually iterate as needed.
Okay.
All right. So is there any other question, feedback about the use case documents that people want to speak about? This could be a good time. Or otherwise, I can proceed to the next one. I don't see any raised hand. Okay. So Stefano, I think that you have added this point into the agenda item. So I don't know if you wanted to speak to this item.
So we also discussed offline and other places. I think I brought this without knowing you guys had already discussed this with the community meeting, in the community meeting. I understand that broadly the decision is kind of the opposite, to actually bundle the Model Registry as part of the release. I think that's okay. My only, it's not a concern, it's more of a, you know, I want us to be mindful of the fact that it's an alpha and that our communication in the release will highlight that it's an alpha. I also understand that there's no dependencies, it's a pretty independent component, which is good. So there's no inherent risk in deploying it. That's why I was a little bit cautious. But I also understand that from a community point of view and users point of view, it's very important for us to, for it to gain traction, to actually bundle it. So it's all good. I'm just saying, maybe let's think through in terms of blog posts, release blog posts, social media, how we talk about it, just to make users aware that it's not a production service yet, but but it's there still, because we do believe in how important it is. We kind of have, I think we have to balance that that discussion. That's all.
Okay, no, thank you for sharing, and also thank you for explaining also in the different meetings about this one. To me, the one thing that I would like just to sort of like summary for the benefit also of the whole group is that so there was since the 1.9 release, one thing that we did is that we kept track on the all the checklist items that as the release team, so you and basically Ricardo went through and shared with this working group. Thanks again already for having us help us sort of like list out all the things that needed to be done, because that made the process a bit easier, at least to have sort of like an overall maps. And I think that we are hitting on all the points. One thing
Yes.
that sort of like I want also to highlight is that in every page, as requested, especially for the documentation, there is about the alpha.
The alpha banner, yes.
Alpha banners.
Yes, I saw that.
That was a thing that was requested. I didn't put it only there, but I think that as well I put it also, on the action item like feedback, because this was not something that was requested by you or others, but simply I felt like, maybe people go through the example and then they say, oh, but seems to me that is a very, how to say, still a raw experience. Yes, because it's an alpha project. So let's say now you're invited to provide feedback about what you were expecting to see, and you didn't find, if you scrolled through the documentation and you didn't find what you were looking for. So to me, the point now becomes that the fact that if I understand correctly, since we don't have any dependency between Model Registry and other components, indeed, as we just discussed, I cannot personally see a risk in about having this one, and it will make the process of installation simpler. Because otherwise, what I can imagine is that a user would need to first install Kubeflow, and then also do some manual step in order to try out some of the tutorials, when actually at least this kind of onboarding, especially during this phase, is sort of like out of the box. It's like, oh, you already went through the stages of having Kubeflow installed, and now you can try at least the examples that are in the tutorial. While instead, if they are not bundled as part of the manifest, I can see that people say, it's like, I am not bothered about going.
Yeah. Now that you make me think of it, in the installation docs, do you either have a no-op that says your Model Registry is already installed, or a warning that says Model Registry is bundled with the core manifests? Probably already have it. Something like that. I'm just wondering, maybe people just tend to follow mindlessly docs, and maybe they just go through this where it's okay, we got it. And if one does kubectl apply, I guess it's just a no-op because the manifests are there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good, awesome.
Well, it's like the difference, if let's say if they are not included by the manifest by default, will be to say that you have this one, we would need to remove this sentence, and then you have to execute basically this part, right?
Yep.
So this is what they would. This is how the docs would reflect if the release team decided not to onboard the manifest, let's say. But it seems to me that maybe people are sort of like, if maybe they come to the getting started, okay, maybe they will check for installation, and sort of like people will take the path of least resistance. So what I'm a little bit concerned is that if they are not bundled by default, then the user will say, oh,
Yep. Yep. No, makes sense. I mean, despite my first comment, I totally agree, and it's a good way to move forward. So
okay,
it's all good.
Okay, this was the meeting bundled by default, since there is no dependency from knowledge to other components. So, well, usually from deployment path. Right. Okay. For the Kubeflow 1.9 readiness checks, is there anybody else who would like to raise any points? Something I might have missed, any other comments? I don't know, Ramesh, Dheeraj, please check me out if I'm missing on anything. All right, I can move on, I think. All right, UI development. So in the previous meetings, we had some introductions. I think that as well about how potentially reuse some of the components for as part of the community work. So I've also received here, Stefano, you've left a comment. So I don't know if you wanted to speak to that as well. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Ramesh, you can go ahead.
All right. Okay. So since there are a couple of folks that raised their hand for the UI, I wanted to make sure I give the up-to-date information on where we stand on it, right? So there's been some discussion, at least inside Red Hat, in terms of how we can support this UI development through the through community. I think there are 4 or 5 GSOC students raised their hand. They will help with it. But I wanted to see if we can find mentors for them, rather than just saying that, yeah, go ahead and develop something. So that would not be the right way to do it. So that's what I've been doing, is to try to find mentors inside Red Hat that can steer these students in a right path, in a right architecture, that they can introduce them and help them with that. It's taking a little bit of a time, but I think I identified a person. So I will try to see if I can get him in touch with these folks, and I'll try to see if there is a one-off call we can make it to get them introduced, and see, at least talk about next steps a little bit with them, and then the idea is to fold them back into this meeting. So there may be little legwork I need to do before I can do that. So I will take that as an action item and see how we can slice that. But yeah, I think nothing in terms of deliverables, but just the process itself, where it is.
Thank you for driving this forward. Having a UI is fundamental for the success of this component, broadly, for the usability. So yeah, so thank you for rallying up folks, and especially mentors. I think it will be key. My comment there, and my kind of concern here is, so historically, there has never been a lot of investment in the UI. There was a big push from Aricto a couple of years ago when we were there, and we pushed a lot of code for the web apps. So what happened is, besides Kubeflow pipelines, which is React, all of the rest are based on Angular and common components. So now I think the question is, and this is probably something that has to be run by the KSC, the question is, how do we sustain UI development in the future? We have Model Registry that will come with a new UI. Notebooks 2.0 is looking at building a revamped web app. And again, they are also discussing, do we use Angular? Do we use React? My only concern is, do we as a community want to keep a consistent user experience across these web apps? If so, how do we do that? And how do we support developers in onboarding? If I want to work on the Caddy web app, or want to work on the Model Registry web app, do I have common patterns? Do I have common tooling? Do I have common components? So go ahead.
So this obviously this much beyond our meeting here, right?
Yeah.
But there is inherently there is some interest from Red Hat in supporting that initiative you just mentioned, Stefano. So one of these mentors I was mentioning is wanting to start such an effort that with the architecture and with the BFF patterns and stuff, which complements to what Kubeflow has, and the idea, at least we are trying to pitch in there, is let's try to use this, whatever they are suggesting, as Model Registry as the template project, right? In building this architecture as well as these technologies to bring it, because since we don't have anything here, this is the perfect one. Then how we can showcase the success of this thing and then present it to the Kubeflow community, saying that when I say Kubeflow community, not just Model Registry, but all the other components that what we did, and the advantages with using this thing, bringing under the same umbrella, but at the same time everybody have their own components to develop, but at least the pattern, the languages, and we can agree on. So that's the kind of a interest Red Hat does have. So I'm gonna bring in at least. We thought we will start with just the model registry and slice it from there, but there's definitely interest from Red Hat in terms of supporting that initiative.
So you said there's one person. Can you speak of their name? Because I'm talking with one person from Red Hat about some of these things.
Either
I'm not sure if it's the same. Either. Okay, I've been chatting with him.
Okay.
Because I did start a design language and kind of a broader, higher level discussion almost a year ago. There's a pending issue, and okay, we're supposed to talk about that in a couple of days. So it's good it's the same person.
Okay.
So that's great. Second point is, I love that you guys want to do this. At the same time, I see a parallel with what happened with the Ricto. We started building common components, trying to drive common patterns. Then Ricto had to kind of, draw from the community. Now there's you guys who are trying to push for a new standard.
Yeah.
What happens in 2 years when Red Hat maybe pulls back and someone else comes in? And what I'm saying is,
I won't say that there is no motivation for us in doing it.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm not referring to.
I want to. So what I was saying is there is a little motivation even for us in there. So we want to see if we can drive this one such that we can drive our efforts, our Kubeflow distribution based on this one. So it's a long road. I won't say, Stefano, that we can get it done in next Kubeflow 1.10. We will get it done by that. It's probably a little bit longer journey than that, right? But we are looking at that outward. So if that happens, right? If at all we can land that one, then at least we can say that there is not one person, but there is a team of people who, along with the Kubeflow community, who is going to be championing this model.
No, exactly. No, I totally agree. And I'm just so that I'm clear. I'm not saying your approach is wrong or the previous approach was good or anything like that. Any approach is as good as the people that stand behind it. So my only point here is, or rather the question is, do you guys want to run this over by the KSC and try and making it a more formal framework adoption, rather than saying let's push it from the Model Registry side and then kind of hope then we can make it work for the broader community? Because that seems more risky to me. And probably less challenging for you guys. Probably it's the shortest path, but at the same time, there's the risk that you try and push a new approach when maybe it doesn't really fit exactly with how other people want to use it. So kind of taking a little bit of a step back and running over our governing body and saying, hey guys, let's build something that can last and has backing from KSC, and we're all agree, let's move forward with that. Then that has much higher chances of being the longer term solution and being adopted by everyone.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
No, definitely. So here, even the option I was saying, Stefano, is not underhandedly sliding it in. So the way we looked at least my perception is, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we take the longer route, right, it would be before another year before we see any UI for Model Registry, right? There is a short-term solution, there is a longer-term goal, short-term goal and a long-term goal. Short-term is, hey, how can we fit, while writing these components in a componentized model, how can we fit it into current Kubeflow model, right? Kubeflow dashboard, how can we fit it there? That's a deliverable we can work towards, let's say 1.10. and get that one done. But it simultaneously build that architecture, as you are saying, right? Because we would have built the components to fit it into that architecture in the model. Make this as the template project to in showcasing to the Kubeflow steering committee that, hey, this is what we did, and we can use the same thing everywhere else. And so if it fails, we will learn while building the model registry. That's because this is the first time we are doing it too. So, so we just don't want to promise something, not deliver it, so to speak.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more people involved. So that's the intent behind it. But certainly, so I am also, at least from my side, I'm looking at what can we deliver. If I say, oh, 2 years from now I'll deliver something, I'm like, yeah, model registry won't be that interesting anymore by then. Yeah, we'll see.
I
We'll
totally
talk
get
to
your
Eder
point.
and,
Yes.
yeah, let's talk to Eder. I'll bring you in when we are talking. When you're, or bring me in when you are talking to him.
Okay.
Figure out what we need to do there.
Okay.
Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think it was a great conversation. I didn't want to interrupt. Just one also item that though I wanted to sort of like more keeping an eye on Model Registry that for instance Kimona's in one of the very previous bi-weekly call, I think it was a very good a comment from a technical standing that I really appreciated, because I think that it sort of like opened the doors to many possibilities. I think is that even the dashboard itself is modular and can be assembled. And this is a sort of like, I would like to sort of like have this conversation where we try to slice concern one day, which is technical, one which is more like, having the standards, having a design language, having things that are principles that needs to be applied architecture wise. Because what I would like to avoid in a situation is that maybe just by sort of like shortcutting to say, oh yeah, most of the components are done in Angular, and then basically we are passing on the opportunity for having somebody that can do that in the React or whatever you have sort of like integrated. To me, at least from a Model Registry point of view, at least this is my perspective, then of course free to open the community. For as long as it integrating the dashboards, it respects the design language, it respects the functional overview that I need in a Model Registry for UI. For me, it's good to go from a community things, for as long as some principles are respected, like how does it integrate with the other components in the dashboard, how does it is not using something like a specifics things that only works there, because this will open the possibility of having broader contribution. Because I've seen that in other projects where maybe the technology was chosen and fixed, this is sort of like already sort of like a niche down on you for only that type of developers. So I totally appreciate the fact that of course we don't want to introduce the frameworks at randoms, but for as long as I can see that there are contributors or people that are willing to commit some effort cycles to have it out of the gate, I think this is something that I will do everything to try to promote and to make sure that we have the proper architecture design flushed out, the design language, again, integration, these kind of things. So this is, I marked down the comments there, Stefano, because of the meetings where Kimona's explained that one to me. So maybe what I would suggest is that if we need to take it to the Kubeflow steering committee, maybe to me the only thing that I would rather ask is more to choose the steering committee to choose whether Angular or React. I would love them to sort of like delineate which are the architecture bullet points that needs to be in architecture document for the UI for each of the components, and which are the minimum design language things that must be ensured for a UI of a component. I think this will sort of like have the broadest net in order to capture on this point. What do you think, Stefano?
I actually totally agree with you in the sense that maybe it came across wrong from my side, but it was never a React versus Angular debate. I agree, because it's not about the specific technology. It's about, as a community, saying, do we allow for more open-ended decisions by working groups to adopt whatever technologies they want, as long as some guardrails are respected. And what those guardrails are, it's exactly what the KSC needs to provide. And it could be just a matter of, this is the design language spec that our apps currently should abide to, or something else, something more, something less. That depends. But we don't know yet. That's the point. It could be implemented in Angular, in React, and whatever else. Maybe we don't care. Maybe we do. As a community, we haven't had that discussion yet, right? So I think that's the point. But as an approach, I agree with what you're saying. It's just about, this is the user experience that we're expecting from the Kubeflow app. As long as that's respected, do whatever you want. And as far as the central dashboard is concerned, yes, it's very modular. As long as you have got a URL that gets you back some web app, it just works.
Yeah, because
so
that was very promising, because at a certain point, we could even sort of like have fully, different technologies that are also not necessarily front-end native. I think that can also be integrated with some other components want to do that as well. Okay, cool.
Good. Okay. I think as a next action item, well, I'll definitely talk with Eder, see where the discussion goes. But maybe let's bring it up with the KSC in terms of, hey guys, do we want or don't we want to make it a KSC priority to define some of these baseline items, both for the Model Registry and the future Notebooks web app, or maybe others, to consolidate the user experience and then take it from there? What do you say?
So do you want to take the action item?
I don't know. I was just, what do you guys think? If you want to take it, or I can take it, it's okay. But if you guys agree on having that discussion, at least we have a consensus here on how to move forward. Then,
I think the correct place maybe to have this point was just to raise it in the Kubeflow community meetings.
Yep.
All right. So I typically attend those meetings, so I definitely can raise it to say that we are investigating this and which are the principles that we are sort of like governing. Because again, as Ramesh mentioned, I would like to avoid sort of like placing the working group sort of like in a situation where first we need the community steering committee to take on an effort that will take maybe a month of time before we can start some work. So I would rather say, as Ramesh mentioned, is like, these are the principles that we are trying to follow. And then it's like, this is the direction that we're trying to go. And then it's like, if of course, it's like, I can expect as well that if you design any sort of like design language guideline, you will need as well to review on other components. So I think this is also something in general. Andre.
Yeah, hi, sorry guys, I joined late. Just to understand, like, so is this a suggestion from your side to make the assets more maintainable, and inherit other like UIs to use them? Just from my understanding.
I wouldn't say that, Andre. To me, is more the fact that I think that the question was, if Model Registry is looking to design a UI, how does it fit in the whole ecosystem? So of a Kubeflow, the Kubeflow dashboard. So we went through this in a previous bi-weekly call some while ago. And I think that what we got out of that discussion, we'll find it where it is. So in the 7th of February meetings, what we got out of it is that the dashboard is pretty modular in design. And so it's like we can integrate basically on almost all technology for as long as it's compatible in the integration. And it provides a very similar user experience, design language of what is available today. I think the question was that whether this needs to be overseen by the steering committees, and I would say actually like pretty much everything. The approach that is trying to be done here is that there are some effort to reuse the components that we are having internally for as well. This is what Ramesh was speaking about for. So how do they can be beneficial for Model Registry to provide an UI for as long as it integrates with the dashboard, with the current design language, the experience, and these kind of things. So I would say it's more about this kind of approach. And the question I think from Stefano was how to make sure that we are not sort of like a falling out of some guideline. So maybe for the CD's understanding is like to maybe oversee that if there are some overarching guidelines that should govern the dashboard. Thank you, Stefano, for bringing up Kubeflow.
Yeah, exactly. So the funny thing like about this design language, because like back in 2019 or 2020, I remember when we migrating a TPUI from React to Angular to support the common assets from the Kubeflow website, like the central dashboard. So the previously it was written in React, and then we rewrite it in Angular. And I guess right now we're speaking about writing them back to React, right? So yeah, it's interesting. So let's definitely have a follow-up on this. I'm pretty sure like from my perspective, all the UIs should follow the same guidelines principles, but at the same time, all the UIs should be deployed independently, because I think we should more and more promote the people that Kubeflow is ecosystem, and it could be run in different ways, right? By the central dashboard. And I'm also like want to learn more, because we just had a chat about the issue about splitting the repo. I just want to discuss with you, maybe from your perspective, can Kubeflow central dashboard can be a separate product, or you envision this as part of the Kubeflow platform?
But by the way, Andre, the common components, the Angular common components, are not part of the central dashboard.
Yeah,
the central dashboard is not even written in Angular right now. It's yet another old framework. So they're just think of it just as an Angular library, which happened to be hosted under the Kubeflow repo, under a common like apps/common folder or something like that. So, but to your point, where that is supposed to live, where that is supposed to be maintained, especially within the reorg of those repos, I guess that's to be determined.
Yeah. And I would love to also like understand your perspective on this central dashboard. Like, should we always live together with the platform specific components like profile controller, KFM, like volumes web app, PVC viewer, or you envision this as a separate product, like Kubeflow/central dashboard, so people can leverage in their platforms like Model Registry, or how they can leverage and training operator pipelines, right, separately. So, but this is a separate discussion. Maybe we
kind of derailed this meeting. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, sure. Sorry about it. Thank you for sharing, Matteo.
No, but no, thank you. I think it was great discussion. I mean, we are reaching the top of the hour, and I have a hard stop just at the top. So I would needed to draw attention. So I will try just to go through a summary. Is there any one last minute action item that people wants to raise their hand and speak to? Going once, going twice, or otherwise at the third, I will summarize. All right, so we went through just an update on the Google Summer of Code. So again, I invite you, thank you for everybody that submitted a proposal, not only for Model Registry project, but also for all the Kubeflow projects. Thank you for this. Now the Kubeflow Google Summer of Code org is going through the review of that. A reminder, you are more than welcome to contribute to Kubeflow community meetings in general. As you can see, we are not missing on work to be done. So if you wanted to get engaged, these working groups meetings are the good place beyond the Kubeflow Slack and all the other communication channel of Kubeflow on how to coordinate with some of the maintainers and the contributors. Then we went through the 1.9 readiness checks. As mentioned, I've taken action item from Stefano on Model Registry specifically. How does it support each phase of the diagrams in the flow? There was a discussion in the meetings that we just held about that there is no hard dependencies between Model Registry, even in alpha and other components, so to be onboarded. And we just spoke about the UI development. It was the last item. So with that, I think that I want to thank you all again for very productive and engaging meetings. I think that I will see you in 2 weeks for the Model Registry working groups, or otherwise in the Kubeflow community meeting that runs every Tuesday. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.